When I first saw what the price point was going to be for the new Wade Flash, I was a little bit skeptical of them that they could really compete with Wade's more flagship models, just because of previous experiences I've had with, Wade budget shoes in the past. But then I got them on foot. And that's why you never judge a book by its cover. Let's get in. And thanks to Way of Wade for sending me a pair of these to check out. However, this video is by no means sponsored, and as always, all opinions, good, bad, and indifferent, are all my own. Now, the uppers of the Wade Flash, really, it's just a giant bed of TPU weaving, and it looks like it's pretty minimal, right? It's pretty airy, and that is true, but if you look at it under the microscope, at each junction, there are multiple strands creating each weave on this, so it's a lot stronger to blunt force into containment than you would think it is. And then in the forefoot underneath of that, you actually get another layer, which does have big breathing pores through that. And then that continues up through the tongue, where you get just a ridiculously light weaving going through the tongue, and then padding up kind of where your ankle meets your foot, where you'd actually need it for the laces. Now, the laces are reinforced with this pretty thin backing, but then it has a really plastic reinforcement right at the most proximal eyelet. The thing I love though about the Flash is this giant Z that is stitched into the pretty tough backing here on the lateral side of the shoe on the underside of the uppers. Then it wraps all the way around the heel counter and is stitched into the medial side of the heel. Now, there is also an internal heel counter in these too, so they're much more stable than they look, from the outside. Now, if you look at the breathability test on these things, they only heat up 99.9 degrees, which, of course, there's just all TPU meshing. You look at the breathability mapping of them, fog is just blowing out of everywhere on these. So, if you're looking for a shoe for light breathability, but also, decent containment considering the weight, this is a very good pickup. The only thing I will warn you is, because they are a little bit lighter, don't expect them to have the containment of something like, let's say, the Fission 9, the Way of Wade 10, or the All City 12, right? It's not that shoe. It is a little bit lighter, and we'll talk about that in the playability section. But for a shoe this light and minimal, still really isn't that bad. Second try. And speaking of that containment, I've seen this on a couple shoes now, where they actually have some material here that creates some friction with your sock. It is still padded, right? It's soft. It's actually a double layer of padding here in the ankle collar and in the heel counter here specifically, but that little patch of blue is meant to create a little bit more friction with the sock fibers to keep your heel in. Heel slippage on these was mild to moderate. It's tough to get a runner's knot in these because there isn't a back eyelet, but the most proximal eyelet does go all the way to the tip of the ankle collar, so you still can get a very good lockdown. I didn't find heel slipping in these to be really anything I noticed, and once the foam breaks in, it's going to keep getting better. Now, speaking of break-in and breakdown, you look at the upper durability test on these 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper. Now, I'll caveat this by saying you do get a lot of rubber that comes up over the toe cap. However, the burr does really start to work through that backing layer. It does not get into the TPU weave, which is nice. So I'd say as long as you're on an extreme everter or dragger, even on an outdoor court, because it actually has tread up here, you're actually gonna get some grip from that. You can actually get some push off from the inside of your big toe joint, the inside of your big toe. But if you're an extreme dragger, I would expect this backing to start looking pretty weird and looking pretty scuffed. Okay, so looking at the midsole, this is really where the title for this idea was cemented with the build quality. If you look at this, it's an entire bed of Leaning Cloud Plus, which is EVA mixed with thermoplastic nylon, right? So it's a pretty light EVA, pretty springy EVA. Now, if you also notice, this is all dimpled, right, in the heel and in the forefoot. That is to allow more accommodating shock absorption, right? Those will kind of move and sway out of the way as you crash land down. But that, to me, isn't the crazy part. The crazy part is the shank. It is top-loaded and double thickness for a budget shoe. I actually had a really hard time getting through this when I was tearing the shoe open. And so, you just don't see that a lot of times on budget model shoes. So, whereas sometimes with the more budget model shoes when they're putting EVA in there, sometimes it's just left exposed, so it's gonna bottom pretty quickly. Whereas in this one, you're getting such high build quality out of the midsole. You're gonna get a lot of durability out of that shank, especially from just jumping and jumping, bending the shoe back and forth, right? So those stress, strain, and shear forces. Now, if you look at this on the bounce height test, got 28 centimeters in the heel, 29 in the forefoot. To me, that might just be because the shank was kind of near the ball bearing in the rear foot, because the heel to ball drop really isn't that much, and it's the exact same foam. So you're gonna get pretty similar performance out of the rear and forefoot. The thing I noticed about these is the heavier a player you are, the more these are shock absorbing shoes. The lighter of a player you are, I think the more that this shank is going to help you, right? So I think it definitely is a two-faced shoe. It's a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde in terms of how it performs versus your weight, which obviously we'll get to a little bit more when we get to the fit and playability. Okay, so getting into the outsole tread, I love 80% of it. Most of it, you know, the full bed of tread is basically just these, you know, lightning patterns, right, going all the way through with these little bolts. But then right here under the metatarsal heads, right where the ball of your foot is, you almost have this, you know, like puzzle piece pattern. And I understand that that's to give you a little more durability, you know, when you're pivoting where you're gonna create the most friction. The only thing I noticed is that when I was pivoting on this, I was not getting nearly the grip that I was getting when I was using, you know, trying to use other parts of the shoe. Plus, you know, this outsole tread does have an outsole-based flange on it, which is actually very long, very, very stable. Really love the profile of the outsole tread in terms of stability and just how much confidence it really imparts to you by how it sits on the ground. If you look at the grip test ramp, slipped at 39 degrees, which is, you know, kind of right in the middle of the range. I just do think that if they didn't have this in the middle, yeah, it wouldn't be as durable because it is pretty chunky right there. It's a lot of surface area, so it's gonna share the load. I think the grip would be a little bit better. I will say though, once the shoe heats up on an indoor hardwood court, it's pretty darn good and it doesn't pick up dust as bad as some other shoes. You look at the outsole durability test on this thing, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper. I mean, almost a millimeter of damage on this. The durometer comes in at about a 15.5. Honestly, for a budget shoe though, it's just as good as a lot of other flagship shoes for outdoor use. I personally think these are really nice shoes on outdoor courts for really hot, humid days, just because they're super light, they're breathable, and the durability profile of them, as long as you don't create too much friction, is actually pretty darn good. You look at the speed ratio of them, comes in at a 2.33. That shank score of 0.3 brings it up to a 2.53. I do think that's where they belong, but I do think that's player dependent. Somebody like me, who, you know, more of a husky dude on the court, and not a Yukon husky, just the husky, they're not gonna be able to use the shank as much because the shoe is so light, right? Your body weight just might kind of overcome the shoe. For someone that's lighter, right? Someone that's training a lot, right? Does not have as much bulk on them as I do. This shoe is gonna be a really, really nice playing shoe for outdoor court just because it gets up and down so well, right? And even on really slick painted outdoor courts, the day I was playing, it was snowing on court, really cold paint. I mean, it was slick paint out there outside. And honestly, as long as I could get some heat into the rubber, these things were giving me just a really confident, nice tactile gripping profile. Just really enjoyed the feel that this outsole tread gave me, even on this really just windy, cold, snowy, slick day. I just noticed that if I tried to avoid this little patch, the grip was, you know, a little bit better. But looking at the fit profile, these fit pretty standard to medium wide in terms of width. They're actually a hair short in terms of length. The only thing about these is it does have an 11-degree inflare in them. That inflare on these is pretty good, and as someone that has a pretty bulky midfoot, I could start to feel that. So a narrow medium foot, I'd say go true to size. If you're a 2E foot and don't have a really bulky styloid on your fifth metatarsal, you don't have that big bump on the outside of your foot, I think you're probably okay on these to go true to size. Because if you can get these true to size, break them in true to size, you're gonna get that weight reduction of them, the less heel slippage issues versus going up. But if you're gonna go up a full size on these, you probably would wear 2 pairs of socks or put some padding under the tongue just to stop some heel slippage on them. If you're a 4E, I would be going up 1 size, doing the same thing on these. Like I said, once the foam starts breaking in, you're gonna start to get, you know, better and better lockdown. In terms of the snake bitten foot, I will say it's a forgiving profile. And if you're on indoor hardwood or rubberized, that's fine. But I would say these with a low profile orthotic, or even just a little padded arch cookie or something in them, it just really takes them up to, honestly, you know, almost as good as some flagship shoes just because of the shank, right? That's what really resists most of the stress, strain, and shear in these things. So to me, heel pain, ball of foot pain, really anything tendonitis, like I said, I would be throwing a low profile orthotic in these, especially just to shield the foam, give you some more durability out of this shoe too. In terms of ankle sprainers, if you're a lighter weight player, I honestly think these are okay just because the flange is just so nice and aggressive. The shoe sits so flat on the ground. It is just a really confidence-inducing fit when you have them on the ground. If you're a very, very heavy player, I could see you, start to push through the lateral side of the shoe if you're somebody prone to that, right? But given the profile of them, if you're the right profile for them, they're gonna treat you very well. And piggybacking off of the fit profile on these, honestly, like I've just done the Leaning Gamma, which is, supposed to be the lightest shoe out there. And these on foot feel just as light, right? I know they're not, they're about 2 ounces heavier almost, but they feel just as light as the Gammas do. They don't give the spring back that the Gammas do. Obviously, they don't have the Peba-based foam. They don't have the flank shank, but you could kind of see flashes of the Gammas in these, you know, no pun intended, or I guess all the pun in the world intended. So, you know, for a lightweight shoe, I thought these were just so nice and just easy to get up and down the court on. They're so confidence-inducing in terms of that tactile feel through the court. There's just the dimpling in the foam, right? That does great for shock absorption, but also in the forefoot, it allows you to feel, right? It gives you a little bit of a different sensation in that forefoot. You can really, you know, you can really feel what your foot's doing on the ground. I think on an indoor hardwood court, especially a little more of a bouncy one or rubberized court, this shoe feels a lot different than it does outdoors, right? This shoe really utilizes what's underneath of you a little more than some other shoes. So if you're playing on hardwood or rubberized, you're probably gonna feel that shank be able to do a little bit more, you know, your feet be able to do a little more in these versus outdoor courts, where on those courts, it's much more of just a confidence game, right? They just give you a lot of confidence shifting side to side, moving side to side, stopping, the grip, everything like that. You know, obviously for jumping up and down over and over again, crash landing over and over again, yeah, they're not rocket ships and they're not complete pillows either. That's why I said, you know, an orthotic is good for these. But in terms of quick movement, really shifty movement, just trying to get your feet going, this is just such an amazing pickup. And it really performs like flagship level shoes in that way. And I was just, really blew my mind. I mean, you know, I said, you know, like, are these the best budget basketball shoe ever? And maybe, I'm sure to some people it will be. I would say these ones right now, let's say the Dawn Issue 5, those are kind of the best ones out there. And you know, this isn't unprecedented where we've seen budget level shoes perform just leaps and bounds better than flagship. I mean, in the tennis space a year or so ago, I made a $79 shoe my shoe of the year because it played so much better than a lot of the flagship shoes out there, the New Balance 796. It was just leaps and bounds over most flagship shoes, and it's 70 some bucks USD. So it's not unprecedented, but it is a nice surprise when you see something where you're really getting something for your money. No, it's not for everybody for sure, but for the price profile and for the right players, those people are absolutely gonna love them. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on the flashes, or honestly, what's been your favorite budget shoe this year? Maybe I'll do a video on budget shoes, maybe some top fives. I mean, spoiler alert, this one's probably gonna be in that list, you know, shocker. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on kind of what's been your favorites. And maybe, like I said, if you'd like, maybe I'll do one of those top 5 videos as well this year. And if you do want to see another sibling to the Wade Flash, the Dawn Issue 5, like I said, another budget shoe, which I think absolutely tremendous for multiple sports even, make sure you click into this video up above and subscribe down below. Respect your rubber and foam. I'll see you someone in the Sneakerverse.